Court is now in session.
Yay. Okay, guys, I'm so excited for today. We have a special guest who will be joining us. We love diving into ACOTAR here, and since we're all women, we don't really get the male perspective. So that is a little hint of what our episode will be on today. So we've invited my uncle who's read all of ACOTAR and lived to tell the tale. So everyone, welcome Puya.
Hey all.
Hello, welcome Puya.
Nice to be here.
We're excited to hear your hot takes, your opinions. So can you tell us how you started reading ACOTAR? Because I think we all want to.
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's nice to be here. Secondly, I like fantasy novels. I didn't realize there was a term romantasy. So my sister-in-law Helen introduced me to that. And so Helen and I speak about fantasy books all the time. And so she recommended I read ACOTAR. And she's made a few other recommendations. So I'm normally guided by her. And we have some pretty good conversations about the books. And so that's, I guess, the reason I'm here.
He's in the cult now.
He's in the cult. It seems like you two have a common thread, Jules and Helen. You're recruiting everybody to the ACOTAR cause. That's also why I'm here, Puya. Juliet recruited me.
Yeah, and I think my daughter is on book 2 or 3 at the moment. So you'll have more opinion soon, I guess.
So one thing that we have talked a lot about, but we want to hear your opinions, is about our beloved Tamlin and what your thoughts are, not just about him, but also him under the mountain in the first book. Why did he do literally nothing, in my opinion?
Let's be careful with our words.
Right. Okay. So I think Tamlin's quite a traditional guy. He's bound by his traditions. And I don't think he actually got the kind of training he should have gotten from his father. I don't think he wanted the job. And so I think he was ill-equipped to run the court. I think fundamentally he's a good guy. Okay, so fundamentally I think he has a good heart. But I do think that he was completely broken. Right? And
under the mountain.
Helen, well, I think he was broken before that, but I think that being under the mountain was basically, he felt completely powerless. He just got to the point where, he was, mental breakdown, and he felt completely powerless. So I think the reason he did nothing is because he felt like he couldn't do anything without jeopardizing Feyre's, and I say Feyre, not Feyre. That's because I think the E's silent, but anyway, be that as it may. I think he wanted to preserve her life as much as he could. So could he have done more? Probably. I just don't think he had the mental capacity. I also listened to, I think it was your first podcast, and there was this whole thing about why he threw himself at her under the mountain when he got to actually have contact. And I think it's because he was like, the only thing he could relate to was his animal state. Right? It's just that physical attraction. That's the only thing that he could actually connect with, because his mental state was actually broken. So your higher mental, intellectual state was gone with Tamlin. So that's my take on Tamlin. I think fundamentally he's good, but I think he's ill-equipped, and he's got this great self-loathing. I'm not quite sure why there's so much self-loathing, but it's there.
I'm so glad we brought you on, Puya. Amazing take. We love it. Case closed. Let's move on. Yeah. Juliet, do you have any words after hearing that amazing explanation?
We need someone who sees it the other way.
I'm sure there's
just
no
one
shortage.
company.
Yeah, there's no shortage. I'm sure people out there have their reasons to hate Tamlin, but I agree with Puya, and I think Helen and I have explained this point as well, and we see it very similarly. So Juliet is thinking. Her wheels are turning.
Well, was there anything in the first episode that you were watching that you really, really agreed with or really disagreed with?
I guess on Tamlin, I certainly think fundamentally he has a good heart. anybody that's fundamentally got a good heart, they could go off course for various reasons. And he may be a weak person in essence, and he may not be in touch with his emotions. And I know your take on this, Juliet. I hope I remain your uncle. You don't disown me. But I do think that I disagreed with you. But I thought the rest was pretty good. But I've heard a certain someone doesn't really like Rhys or Rhysand. We have to discuss that a little bit.
Yes, I'm not on the Rhys bandwagon. And I think it's normal for books one and yeah, maybe just one where you're not. But I never got on that bandwagon after 2, 3, 4, 5. Who knows? Maybe 6 will be the trick.
But it's. I mean, the question is what is it? Because what I noticed with him, there were a lot of signals about Rhys being a much deeper character than he let on in the first book. You could see he had a lot of depth, and that there was a game that was being played. And that's, when she was broken and he went into the cell and he spoke to her, you could immediately see that, he had layers, a lot of layers. You don't see that with Tamlin. So he's got a depth of character that you don't like, that the others don't have.
Funny that you should say that, because when I read that scene where she's about ready to break and he goes in and he licks her tears, I was like, I didn't know what to think. I was like, what the heck? Ew. Why? But what it did for me, that particular scene, is I thought maybe there is something here. So I began to look at the layers that you're talking about, Puya.
You became more inquisitive rather than just viewing him with a negative light.
Yeah, because up to that, it was negative.
Yeah. I think for me, obviously I was very put off by the whole licking of the tears. One, just the sheer hygiene of it. But then two, and you guys know this is like my sticking point, Puya, maybe this might be new for you, is I do not like it when there is a relationship already set up. Like Feyre was only under that mountain because of Tamlin. Period. Full stop. That's it. And then to have somebody kind of swoop in and meddle in that relationship, which is, I'm sorry, if somebody's licking your tears, like if Tamlin would have walked in that moment, what would he have said? So I just don't like the start of their relationship. And to me personally, that's a big thing, how a relationship starts. So going forward, I just could not look past it. I could not look past it.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't like Feyre and Rhys.
Melissa, are you sure you're not a Scorpio?
I'm a Gemini, which is probably worse.
Okay. I get it.
Yeah,
Puya's
interesting.
wife is a Gemini.
And my mom. I'm surrounded by them.
Yeah.
Okay, so my take on that is actually in the subsequent books, you actually see that Rhys restrains himself and refrains from actually interfering. It was only in that last moment when they were walking down the aisle when he actually comes in. He never tried to seduce her in the time that he took her away. Right? He could have, but he didn't. Right? And
I disagree.
Well,
because I mean, under the mountain, I think he started putting in that foundation, right? Like building that friendship, and I use that term very loosely. Licking her face, that's not something a friend does. Bounding her to a spell where he has to see her. At first, he wanted to see her. What was it? Every week, she had to spend or
one. It was 1 week per month.
Yeah, but they got up to 1 week per month. I think it was in the beginning, it was more or something like that. Like there was, you could just see he was like casting his web, right? And he knew he couldn't seduce her then because she wouldn't have been receptive to it. But as the moment, right, that he saw an in, he swooped right in and took it. That's how I see it.
Honestly, I would do the same thing.
He knew who she was to him.
Yeah. She was his mate.
The whole chapter, what is it, 54 in the cabin, where he explains how they're destined. I completely agree. They are destined. It's very obvious. It's true. But I just don't like how it started. It's icky to me. Like the whole thing is tainted.
Well, I think you're a romantic,
I am. I am.
and
That's
so
very
and
true.
so yeah, and so anything that impinges on that for you is a problem. So, but I think I think Rhys was walking a very fine line, and I think he's incredibly good at it. But the thing is that he fundamentally stayed true to the course, right? He could have been a lot more manipulative. He
Yeah.
could go into her mind and control her completely, but he's
Mm-hmm.
withheld that. Now, with that level of, charm, looks, intelligence, mind-altering abilities, he didn't use any of that, and that for me has a lot more integrity than most of those characters.
That's a
Agreed.
great point.
I shall give you that. I shall give you
I
that.
wish I
Yeah.
could be I wish I could be that articulate.
I
um,
I will concede. I agree with that. He could have been more manipulative.
He really did restrain himself.
He
Yeah.
did.
Sorry.
He
Go
did.
ahead.
Puya, is there anything else that you would like to share about your thoughts on Rhys?
Yeah. So Helen and I were discussing the Rhys and his manipulations to get to a certain outcome. And then we got onto the topic of what a strategist is, right? And so you actually see the different characters. And there's like three categories in my mind. There are those that are very tactical. They don't see much farther than their noses. It's immediate, it's now, it's you take action, etc., right? And Feyre is very much like it, and that's why she goes and dismantles Tamlin's court, because she's angry, she's instinctual, she does things immediately. Then the second category is people that kind of look into the future, and they look at what's happening now, but they've got like a 3 to 5 year, or maybe in Fey terms 30 to 50 year, or whatever it is, kind of timeline, right? And so they act accordingly, right? So they withhold things in order to be able to get that outcome. And then you get those that are long-term strategists, and they look at 50-year, 100-year kind of trends. I think Reese is the third category, and I think Fair is the first category, and all the rest kind of sit between the first and second. And so that level of strategic thinking, it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of clever thinking to be able to move things in a certain direction to achieve your ultimate outcome. And that's what I like about his character.
See, that's what I don't like about his character. Because just going back to what we were speaking before, how under the mountain he started, laying that foundation with Feyre. That's how I see it. Like he was strategizing. He knew his ultimate goal. Sure, he restrained himself, but that was part of his strategy. It just doesn't feel pure to me.
But so this is the thing, right? It doesn't feel like it's pure, but you
Mm-hmm.
should rather look at the motives. Okay, his motives are pure, and how he goes about it you don't like, but it's the
Yes.
motives that's important, because then there's something about the purity of the person, right? And so whereas if people can be exactly the other way around, they can do all the good things and all the nice things, and their motives aren't pure. So the purity of motive is probably the key thing, and he shows that in the subsequent books, and he regrets it as well, right? It's a huge burden on him to do the things that he does, but he's trying to get to that ultimate outcome. That's a hell of a character, I tell you. That's proper leadership, in my opinion.
So you like Rhysand and you like Tamlin. I want to know your favorite characters, but also characters that kind of like, just get under your skin, you're not a fan of, if any.
I like Lucien. He's a good guy. I think
That's
fundamentally he's a
I
good guy.
I think that's Melissa's favorite, or
He's
one
my
of them,
favorite.
right?
He just seems
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
complex to me. What do you like about him, Puya?
I think fundamentally he's a good person. He's quite loyal. You know, he's not an overly sophisticated person, but you know, he knows right from wrong. He's a good confidant, and he tries to be a confidant to many people. You can see how he is with Elaine and how he's suffering, but he refrains. So I think those are all good traits. I think Cassian's a good guy. Cassian doesn't see beyond his nose. He's not sophisticated in any shape or form.
But he's so dreamy.
Yeah, you know, like Ken and Barbie. But I mean, he's also he's a good guy. He's just he's not sophisticated. So for me, so when I look at my own character, I identify a lot with Rhys, just in the way I think. It's very similar. And Cassian, you know, I've got a lot of friends that are like Cassian, and they're great to hang out with
Mm-hmm.
and all the rest of it. But I ain't getting into an intellectual conversation with any of them. They're just great to hang out and go, you know, do whatever. And I wouldn't say he's my least favorite. I mean, they all have their strengths and weaknesses. I find Azriel to be the most obviously mysterious because we don't know enough about him. I need to read that additional chapter on him. I think he's emotionally completely stunted because of his childhood. That comes out quite clearly. And I also think that, and that's why he's got an on and off button, right? He doesn't show anything, and he's into himself, and the shadows come and go, and then he explodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that just shows somebody that just doesn't know how to deal with their emotions. But he's got a kindness to him that comes out every so often. But I think he's broken. So those are the guys. I think Eris. There's something about Eris. He seems like a really bad guy. I'm waiting to see what comes out on him, but there's something that we're not seeing, and so it's got to come out in the next book. I think his father is an absolute arse, and he should be taken out as fast as possible.
Agreed.
Um, and then there's Morrigan's father. He needs to be the next in line.
Mm-hmm.
But these are just normal foul, evil characters that you don't get a depth of understanding of them, and I don't think I mean, they're side characters, aren't they? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've talked about how some of the women can be annoying. Do you find the women annoying?
okay, so I think Fair is very stubborn, and that sometimes irritates me. I know she's trying to do the right thing, but again, because she's tactical and she's stubborn, I think that's what comes out in her character. But fundamentally, I like her. She's also very young. She's 19, 20, and the others are 400 years old. But I like her. I mean, I like her grit and I like her strength. She's really strong, and
Yeah.
um, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think Reese is actually a good counter to
Yeah. What do you think about Nesta?
her. She's an interesting character. Okay, I'll tell you what I like about her. She's got a lot of strength.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't like about her character is the self-loathing. She's a person of extremes. As much as I like that strength of character, and I think the reason is that, as Juliet and Helen will know, my mom's a very strong character. My wife is quiet, but she's a very strong character, and I like that. I like that in women personally. But I don't like the self-loathing and the pulling in and saying "woe is me" all the time, right? I mean, the whole of book 5 is about her peeling those layers of the onion,
Yeah.
right? And there's nothing to show inordinate trauma in her childhood years. If there was, you'd say, well, there's a childhood issue here, but that's not the case, right? So it's something to do with her actual character. I can see Juliet's about to say something, but
Yeah.
there's something about her character that has pushed her into that, and it might be the manipulation of her mom.
Yeah.
There might be the mom's view on the dad, and that kind of built up a resentment on her dad. So there's a bunch of layers, but that's what I don't like about Nesta's character. I
Well,
don't like that self-loathing.
I think we discussed this last episode, maybe Jules, but our take was that Nesta's character was shaped by her mom, and that was her trauma, her childhood trauma. I don't know.
Mm.
She did redeem herself. I mean, she had her arc, and now she's past that self-loathing
Hmm.
thing. So I think you're absolutely right. But at the end of the fifth book, she's at a good place.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
she is, and I think the important thing about her is because she's crossed that mountain, she's going to become a super character because now there's love and there's self love,
Hmm.
and you combine that with the strength of character, and that becomes a very powerful person.
That's true.
And I think Elaine's exactly on the upper. Like Elaine for me,
I need to hear all your thoughts on
Yeah,
Elaine
we need to
because, yeah.
please expand.
look, I think I thought about this now. I've got to remember what I thought because I agreed with what I was thinking. So just give me a
So
second. Um,
you said that she is the least attractive of the sisters, right?
for me, yeah.
In what way?
Okay, so what I said is I like women that have strong character, but what I don't like about her is, it's not to say she doesn't have an inner strength. You see that coming out towards the end, but she likes to live in a bubble and keep everything very light and fairy and overly romantic, and and
That's probably why I like her.
um and I think she's been always been propped up as the beautiful one, and everybody wants to protect her because of her softness and all of that. And just that for me is, I think she's the weakest character out of all of them. Now that doesn't mean that she doesn't gain strength as time goes by, and I think you see that coming through. But just the same way that Nesta had to go over a mountain, she's got to go over the same thing. She's got to find that resilience in her, and this world that she would love to live in that she realizes actually isn't reality, to contend with that, and then kind of still see the good in the world and all the loveliness, but have it have a proper dose of reality. So I think she's a little bit out in kind of la la land for me. And if you talk about who's your favorite and least favorite characters,
Hmm.
I would put her in the least. And then the one that I like a lot, and I think again, I think a lot of it is facade. There's a power to it, is Morrigan.
Okay. You need to explain why you like Morrigan because she's actually one of my least favorite characters.
Mm.
So I would love to hear.
Okay. I mean, she's fun and, friendly, and, she always displays this bright persona. I think there's a certain level of genuineness to it, but I do think it's a bit of a facade. I think the trauma that she went through has damaged her a lot, and I don't know whether she's processed it properly. But you can see it come out all the time, right? She's been through hell,
Yeah.
and yet despite that, she's got a positive outlook on life, and I quite like that. It might come out a bit frivolous. She likes to look glamorous and all the rest of it. But again, I think there's a depth of strength that I like. She's very powerful, right? And she restrains herself from using that power. Yeah, I mean, I find her generally quite a pleasant character. Why
What
don't
makes you
you,
think
Juliet?
well,
Why don't you like her, Jules?
okay, I think it's a personal thing because I think that I'm very intuitive and I when I see people who I think are not being their authentic selves, I dislike them. I'm not a fan. And that's what I think. She's not being authentic. She's not, like Puya said, there's a facade there. There's like a mask she's putting up, and it's
But
really not who she is.
that mask doesn't get revealed until like way later on in the books. So were you able to pick up that she was putting on a facade from early on?
I don't think that I picked up that it was a facade, but I didn't like. Okay, how do I say this? I wasn't a fan of the lack of depth that I was seeing in her character. I
Okay.
think that's what it was for me.
Mm.
Okay. That's interesting. So when we first meet her, I thought she was really cocky, and that didn't look great. But then as time went by, yes, there is a facade, but in the books, her real character comes out. But I think personally, I can forgive the facade because of the trauma that she's been through, right? I can forgive the facade. I mean, not forgive, but I mean, I'm okay with the facade
You can
because
look past
despite the
it.
trauma, besides the trauma, well, in spite of the trauma, she's got a more positive outlook and she's kind of put things back together. And I think there's a certain level of strength in that. So sometimes you've got to, everybody puts on a certain facade. All of them do.
But theirs is like everyone else's is a conscious decision, whereas hers is a reaction to a trauma that's unresolved, in my opinion.
Well, we don't know what's happened over there because it's going to be revealed at some point. But there is something there between Azriel, Eris, and her that is not being discussed.
Yeah.
And to me, it seems like she has this power with truth, and I think she also has a power to hide the truth. So let's
Mhm.
see what happens. I'm kind of uh, in the place where I have to wait and see what happens next with her to decide what I think.
That's totally fair, and I agree. There's definitely something that we're not seeing.
Mhm. Not the full story, at least. We're getting glimpses of it, and we've got a lot of glimpses from Mor, but it seems like Eris has things to say as well.
I do want to say one thing about Moore though. I always admired that she is not a female to mess with other females. She was a supporter of Feyre from the beginning, and I always appreciated that. She was her friend.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
she's a girl. She's a girl's girl.
She's a girl's
she's
girl.
a girl's girl. Yeah.
Mhm. Last question. Would you recommend other men read this series?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that likes these kind of books should read them. I think she's done a great job of, she's a great storyteller, and she's created great worlds, and she depicts them really well. Um, will the level of romance be interesting to men? I think, men that have a good balance between head and heart, I think they'll enjoy it. Those that are very much in their head probably won't. Those that are very much in their heart will love it. So it really depends on the individuals, but I'm sure there are many men that read these books and enjoy them. Yeah, I enjoy them. It's got to be easy enough to read, right? Helen knows this. I'm reading a non-fiction book right now. It's like watching paint dry, right? And so, whereas her novels, you wanna pick them up and read them. So, but that's just my take.
Well,
Amazing.
thanks for sharing.
Thanks for being here. That
Yeah,
was really
thanks,
nice.
That was
Puya.
fun. I'll watch your podcast with interest. I'll be talking to Helen on a regular basis.
Puya, thank you so much for joining. We really enjoyed you providing that male perspective, and it was lovely meeting you. So, with that, I think we can close court now. So, court is adjourned. Thank you all.